I asked you guys which vampire movie you would like me to review. And y'all spoke. The Nude Vampire won. So that's what we are going to talk about today. Do you remember when I did that review of Shock and I used the box cutter as like my prop for the whole video, waving it around? I thought about doing that with this cross. And I also thought about bringing out a candelabra, but I didn't have any red candles. Anyway, let's get to it. This is going to be spoiler free, so if you haven't seen it, you are welcome to stay. The Nude Vampire was released in 1970. It's directed by Jean Rollin. Oh, hello. Oh, hello, mama. It is written by Rollin and Serge Moati. Here's the synopsis, which can be found on Letterboxd and IMDb. A young man falls in love with a beautiful woman being chased by sinister masked figures at night. He tries to track her down and learns she's being held captive by his father and colleagues who believe that she's a vampire. This film is starring Caroline Cartier as the vampire, Olivier Rollin as Pierre, our main boy, and Maurice Lemaitre, oh my god, as Georges, Pierre's father. It might be that I watched this film for the first time because the Castel twins are in this movie and I just love twins. I know like a lot of people love twins, but I think I saw a picture of the two of them with vampire teeth in, which I believe was from Lips of Blood, but I ended up watching The Nude Vampire first because of these twins, and this is their first Rollin film. Now, according to Wikipedia, this film received poor reviews upon its initial release, but later got cult status. And it's still very celebrated to this day. From everything that I see, like in this sphere, like this channel, the comments on this channel, the people I talk to, people love this movie. So I always hear really good things. It seems to be that at least the most people I know are in favor of the film. So anyway, let's get into my thoughts. This was my first Rollin film I ever saw. To this day, I guess I've seen 4. I've seen Grapes of Death, Living Dead Girl, and Lips of Blood. So just take that into consideration throughout this video that I'm kind of uninitiated. I'm like a newbie. Now, what was I expecting when I first watched this film? Well, given the title, I thought we were gonna get something kind of trashy and sexy. Something with bite, if you will. Yeah, I was expecting a sexy vampire movie because it's called The Nude Vampire. But if you've seen this film, you know that is not what I got. My initial review on Letterboxd, I called this film just straight up goofy. I didn't take it seriously. I was just laughing the whole time. I thought it was pretty awkward and pretty pointless, although really visually pleasing. I called it rough. I called this movie rough, which is kind of harsh, but I did ultimately say that I found it to be enchanting, lovable, and memorable, but I also called it hilarious. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't the intention with the film. So yeah, when I was first done with it, I was like, what was that? But as time passed, you may know I like to talk about this idea called the sleeper effect, that the effect a film has on you increases over time. So after a few days, I was like, I think I kind of liked that actually. And then I found myself wanting to watch it again. And then I found myself wanting to buy it. Oh, and I own it. I should have brought it out here. And then I found myself wanting to buy an orange bed sheet so I could dress up like her. It does somehow leave an impact, even though it's not, you know, the kind of vampire movie that you may want. What would I say to someone going into this film? How would I describe this experience? What should they go in expecting? The title is a bit of an overstatement. It's a bit of a sensational title. The vampire is about as nude as I am right now. And while you might think from the title that you're getting into something a bit more sleazy, it's instead whimsical, surreal, and sort of classy. It's not like a horror movie. It is more like an experience. So as Lord Heron pointed out recently in my community tab, this film shouldn't be considered a horror film as much as it should be considered under the fantastique genre. which is not something that I was familiar with. So I read about fantastique, which is a genre that is characterized by the intrusion of supernatural elements into the realistic framework of a story, accompanied by uncertainty about existence. The fantastique is often considered to be very close to science fiction. And I think that definitely fits. So yeah, this isn't a horror movie, and this isn't a sleaze fest. And this is an experience that might have you going WTF. The themes are dark, but it doesn't hit like a horror movie. It's best, like horror adjacent at best. Thematically, it's like a horror, but it isn't executed like one. Instead, something a lot more magical and surreal. And don't you worry, I'm gonna try my best not to say surreal over and over in this video. Anyway, let's talk about the story. Just to give you a brief refresher if you haven't seen it in a while, or if you've never seen it, so you kind of get an idea of what's going on here. Pierre is our main character. His dad is super rich. Pierre meets this orange girl, the vampire, and finds out that his dad is keeping her prisoner. And his dad like explains, we're studying her. I'm trying to keep it vague so I don't spoil anything. The dad is like, we're studying her. Anyway, the dad, the colleagues, and the orange girl end up relocating outside of Paris now that some attention has been drawn to them. So they retreat to this beautiful castle in a rural setting. And Pierre, of course, follows them. He is desperate to find out what's happening with this girl, and he is desperate to protect her. He's just obsessed with helping this girl. He's kind of too much of a do-gooder, if you ask me. Anyway, while they're all at this gorgeous castle, the secrets are slowly revealed. The story is there, but it's slow. I know you Rollin lovers already know. This movie is a lot of people walking down hallways and stairways. Certain aspects of the film, like the suicide cult, are awesome, but they pass by, like that passes by rather quickly. And then the greatest secrets of the film are held off until the very, very end, which leaves us in this long blank space in the middle. I do like the overall story. I just feel like it's not spread out evenly. Yeah, so it's like super concentrated here, it's super concentrated here, and really blank in long stretches. I do love the theme of this like elite cult and vampirism and science. I think all of that's really cool and it's all in there, but it doesn't always get the focus that I wish it got. It's really interesting because most of the Rollin films that I've seen don't rely too much on dialogue. And I think it's really cool because a lot of times you don't even notice that nobody has said anything for a really long time. You could potentially watch some of his films in a different language and it would likely have the same effect. But this is a film that like you really don't have to put too much pressure on yourself to comprehend everything that's going on and like to listen to every bit of dialogue. It's not one that you really have to cling on to the story in order to get that benefit at the end. Like I said, this vampire isn't nude, and she's also like not in the movie very much, which I forgot until I just rewatched it the other day. But she is wonderful. I love how they cast her. This woman, Caroline Cartier, I think she has this sensual innocence about her. Like she seems very like wide-eyed and just sweet, but also has some sort of sexiness to her. I think she's really great. I liked her a lot. But yeah, she's not really nude, but there is some nudity in the movie, so if you like that, it's in there. The film definitely goes a different direction at the end than I was ever expecting, than I could have ever dreamed up. It just takes this hard turn and you're like, oh, okay. It's really cool though. I thought it was fun. I mean, it was kind of goofy, but it also, if you take it seriously, if you just like stop laughing for a second and just consider this ending, for me, it just really kind of tickled my imagination. And I think the ending of the film is what ultimately charmed me. It's like, it hooked me right at the end. And I was like, okay, I see you. I would describe this film as being more artistic and aloof than it is visceral. This is a story, and these are themes that could have been presented in a manner of different ways. The suicide cult, for example, could have been portrayed in a much more intense way. Or even the ending, like it also could have leaned into being a little campier. Like there's so much possibility with this story, but I feel like ultimately the story was told in a way that was drained of like emotion and reactivity, and instead it focused more on just like the overall aesthetic and presentation. It's twisted, but it's presented to you very gently. The violence in this film is practically invisible. There's one notable scene where someone very lazily falls down the stairs after being pushed. It's hard not to laugh at that one. That's probably the best bit of action in the film, if we're being honest. When it comes to this story, logic is definitely not there, but again, you just have to like let go and enjoy the ride. Just tell yourself like this is style over substance, enjoy the visuals, enjoy the show. But the characters in this film are just merely pawns. You don't really empathize with anyone's emotions or actions or anything like that. Pierre just has this like clueless look on his face the whole freaking movie, and the orange girl doesn't talk. The twins are a perfect example of just how empty the characters are. They don't talk for most of the movie, and they do have a few lines. And listen, it's been at least 15 years since I've watched Soylent Green, but do you remember how the women in Soylent Green are furniture? That's how all these characters are. These characters are just furniture for the movie. But visually, I thought this film was inspiring. It was gorgeous. I was watching this film and I was like, I belong in a castle. That's where I'm meant to live. From what I've seen so far from Rollin, he seems to be a rural king, and I love that. Being a rural girl myself, I love that he can make it gothic and make it horror. It's just really, it's really peaceful too. The ambience is so great. The Nude Vampire definitely relies heavily on its locations. Far more than dialogue, effects, or atmosphere, or action, okay? It's about the locations. The film is characterized by lingering camera, lingering scenes in general. This sort of like discordant, almost improvisational music. When it comes to like the set design and everything and the colors involved, everything does seem really purposeful. I'm wondering why he put the vampire in orange, honestly. Maybe it's in an interview somewhere. The atmosphere is mostly generated from the ambience of the setting and this like strange pace. And yeah, it's definitely not painting a horrific or vampire related picture for you. It does not come with vampire imagery. I mean, there is a cross at one point, and it looks a lot like this one, so that's why I pulled this out. There's a cross, and there's a drop of blood, but it does come with its own flavor of beauty and eeriness. The Nude Vampire is patient and intentional. It's basically savoring every moment of itself, every moment of its existence, and it expects you, dear audience, to do the same. You gotta be patient, and if you are someone who likes style over substance, or even somebody who likes listening to ambient tracks, which I do, then you might like this. Now, one of you guys once said in a reference to Jess Franco, I think Bayram said this, I might be wrong, but they said that Jess Franco should be considered an image maker, not necessarily a filmmaker, not in every context. Think of him more like an image maker. So when you're watching these films, you're not necessarily looking for like a story. You're looking for the images. You're watching the images. And I think the same can be said for some of Rollin's work, particularly this one. There are some beautiful images here. I don't know if I have emphasized that enough. Beautiful people, beautiful sights, beautiful images. So let's get into my final thoughts. This film is not one that I can just recommend to someone. You know, maybe you're like me and just don't know film people in real life. So if I'm talking to someone who's like, I like horror movies, I'm not gonna say, oh, well, you should watch The Nude Vampire. It's not for everyone. Rollin's not for everyone. Y'all know this. But if someone came to me and said, I like really weird, trippy, hallucinogenic, surreal, experimental, did I already say that? Experimental films, then I might suggest this one because I do like it. I don't know if I emphasized that enough either. I do really like this film. I liked it because not just for the imagery, but also because the overall story, the crazy ending, was really innovative to me and really new to me. And I was like, oh, that's fun. Side note, I was just doing some reading about this movie and I saw there was a Reddit thread from 12 years ago. And someone said that this movie was on Netflix. Can you imagine? I don't have Netflix, but I feel like they don't put cool stuff on there anymore. Imagine this movie being on Netflix. Maybe it still is, I don't know. I was actually reading a book today and the author said something that I felt applied to the understanding of this film. The book is called Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. It has nothing to do with movies, but he writes about the ancient Greek Eleusinian mysteries and the ritual that they engage in. So like ancient Greek cult rituals, right? The full ceremony, Cal Newport writes, would seem from an objective perspective to be silly and random. But the mysteries were instead about the psychological state they induced. And that did make me think of the Nude Vampire. It's not, it may seem silly and random, but what kind of psychological state does it put you in? And maybe that is the purpose of the film. Would I advise someone to go into this film with a state of reverence or a sense of humor? I would probably say both. Just swing between them both. It's kind of nonsense, but it's also beautiful nonsense if you give it a chance. There you go. That was my spoiler-free review of The Nude Vampire from 1970. I hope I covered everything that I wanted to cover. There honestly is a lot to say, and I could have done with spoilers or done a deep dive into the story, but we'll leave it at this. I hope you had fun. Thank you for voting on my vampire poll. I would really like to just probably do all of the films. Eventually, Vampire Lovers, Countess Dracula, Satanic Rites of Dracula, Dracula AD 1972. What else was on there? I don't know. I want to do more vampire stuff, okay? But that'll do it for now. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.